Welcome back to the Seven Figure Flipping Podcast. I've got two of my favorite people today. I am the CEO of Seven Figure Flipping and Blackjack Real Estate, Adam Whitney. I have with me today Lindsay Arko, who is also the COO of Blackjack, and Paul DoCampo, who runs REI OmniDrip. What's beautiful about this episode is that we're going to talk about how the functions of marketing and sales and follow-up work together to produce results for your business. Lindsay, Paul, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on, man.
Okay, you guys have heard previous episodes of Lindsay. You know she is the most epic salesperson, leader, and trainer in the industry. She coaches all the businesses inside of Seven Figure Flipping. And I think we had you on before, Paul? I thought we did one with you a long time ago. Is that not true?
A webinar. Maybe we did a webinar. I remember that.
Oh, we did a webinar. Okay, so if you've not met Paul DoCampo and you're a listener of the show, Paul has this amazing company called REI OmniDrip, and Paul comes from a copywriting background and a marketing background. So what he does for REI businesses is he creates marketing follow-up campaigns that actually work, that get results, that get responses, and get your sellers engaged with your sales team. And just a quick story for Lindsay and I. A long time ago, we were on Podio years ago, and we had really epic follow-up sequences. The problem is, over the years, the system kind of fell apart and they really weren't working. And we went to Paul a few years ago and we're like, dude, we see the thing you have and we need it. Help us. And Paul installed drip campaigns and sequences inside of our business. And to date, he's done it 2 or 3 different times, updating them and making sure that they stay effective in front of our sellers to get us the best results. So Paul, grateful to have you on the show today, man.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for having me on.
All right, Paul, what can you just give maybe like a 2 to 3 minute overview on your background and how did this all come about?
Yeah, sure. So I was also an investor back in 2016, 2015. I wholesaled. I flipped mobile homes. I had a land flipping business as well, but sort of went into the rabbit hole of copy. Was working a little bit for Trevor Mock at the time. That was kind of my intro of Carrot. Trevor Mock of Carrot. That was my intro into copy. And then I saw, like, there's a long story behind it, but I saw an opportunity when investors were coming to me asking to create like a whole follow-up system for them. And it wasn't just like a 1-time, 2-time thing. I started seeing more interest in it. People just had a hard time following up in general. Because I remember having a hard time following up too. I remember like sitting in my car, and I had Podio too, and having a long list of like people you need to follow up with, and just randomly, okay. And I'd go down the list and I'd say, call, I don't get an answer. And then a lot of times my feelings, emotions get in the way where it's like, I spoke to Sally like 2 weeks ago. Let me just, I'll skip her. Oh, I spoke with Mr. Joe. He didn't feel like he was going to sell yet. Let me go ahead and skip her. So I had no system in place. And so, I totally understand the whole like follow-up dilemma. And so when I saw investors struggling with it, I saw an opportunity there. So I started creating it like little by little, started for one investor at a time, creating these systems until I finally had my own system, an own like solidified way of following up with multiple sequences. Today, I think we usually do like 25 sequences depending on the investor, but all of it follows the sellers. The big problem I see with drip sequences is that they put on their salesperson hat, and Lindsay, you and I spoke about this. They put on their salesperson hat rather than putting on their marketing hat. There's marketing and sales are under the same umbrella, the same coin, but how you do it is different. So what I often secret shop investors, like people that I know or people I've come across. I'll secret shop them. I'll put in my info and see what it looks like behind the scenes. And what I see often The problems I see is they're chasing with direct questions only. It's always constantly, hey, are you still interested in selling? Like any kind of variation of it. Hey, just checking up on you to see if you're still selling. Those are great. We use those 20-15% of the time, depending on the sequence, but they chase. They're just straight sales, direct questions. They don't give any value in between, because a seller isn't, I've been a motivated seller. I remember having a house sit on the market, houses sit on the market for a long time. And sometimes we aren't ready to sell yet. Sellers aren't there yet. They haven't crossed that finish line. So constantly bombarding with direct questions when they don't want to answer that doesn't do any justice. So we send out value-based, benefit-based, problem solution-based type of messages in between, so that we can at least stay in contact, and subtly subtly tell them, hey, we're still here to buy your house. So that's kind of a long story of it, but that's how it came. And today, that's pretty much all I do. Just helping investors with their follow-up campaigns.
And Paul, for the audience, can you define what a drip sequence is and how people use them today?
Yeah, so typically they're I mean, there are all kinds of ways you can do it, and the CRMs are gonna, depending on the CRM, that's gonna really affect what you can do. But yeah, basically it's an automated. Hey, you plug somebody into this bucket, this automated bucket, and then there will be messages sent out at scheduled times for that person. Messages being, it can be all kinds of stuff. Automated texts, of course, automated emails. Notifications or internal tasks to call this person. We like to throw in other tasks like send a Loom video, send some mail. We can send direct mail too, one off as well. So there's a lot of things you can do with that type of quote bucket or drip sequence.
Yeah, that's great. And Lindsay, how important are these sequences and follow up with marketing and sales working together? And maybe what's your viewpoint on them from a sales perspective?
Yeah, I think these can be like a salesperson's best friend, because, a lot of times, especially if you're running a lot of appointments and you're getting in front of new sellers, what tends to happen with your pipeline is they're not top of mind, right? Because you're just on to the next lead, the next deal, the next appointment. And so rather than, like Paul said, try and dig through your pipeline and figure out who you said what to last, these are very targeted. They're targeted to a very specific type of seller, and we can kind of dive into that a little bit later, but it helps keep you on track. It'll automatically send an engaging message that you'll likely get some sort of response to. And then it gives me an alert, hey, you need to call this person today. So I can just work that right into my day versus trying to dig through, read notes, and figure out where I am with a seller at any particular time.
Yeah.
And for us, Lindsay, with the follow-up campaigns, how do they affect our business? Like what are some examples of like what they've actually done for us in terms of results, or either whether that's manpower and resource allocation in terms of your salespeople, or engaging somebody and helping us to close a deal?
Yeah. So because they're integrated with our CRM, we have tasks every day that everybody needs to complete. So those tasks, the way Paul has them set up in our system is that they auto-populate for us. So we know every single day specifically which sellers that we need to take an action on. And also when somebody responds back in, it'll actually pause the campaign so that we can address that particular seller and then either engage them over the phone or maybe even leave them on a drip, depending what the response is. So I don't need to allocate necessarily a lead manager to be doing the follow-up, trying to figure out what needs to be followed up on based on time period or, status type. We know exactly what needs to happen with each lead. So that cuts down on time. And the interesting thing is, and Paul, I'll let you speak to this, but like there are different sequences. So like, can you talk a little bit about how you create different drip sequences for different types of sellers, like different categories, like probate, foreclosure, things like that?
Yeah. And before I forget, I also want to tag onto there to keep the conversation going was, you mentioned how it's there, the tasks are there for them to do. One of the reasons why I created this is because that problem I had, which was chasing sellers, not knowing when to follow up, how to follow up. What I envision with this is that, like, I don't want people to think so much. Like a salesperson, I don't want them to have to think so much. Only when they're face to face with a person, that's when all the thinking comes. That's when all the problem solving comes, when they're face to face. But when it comes to just following up, I don't want them to have to think so much. So in our tasks, I give them exact details on what to do, what to say, if they want to follow that framework. But to answer your question, so the type of sequences, so I don't have too many lead type sequences. So like, I don't do like divorce, tax defaults or anything. The only two is foreclosure and probate, because I remember I used to door knock those, and that's a long process. And so in those two types, I'm giving a lot of value. Like that's my most, I keep saying the word value, and that can mean all kinds of things. Value comes in all kinds of different packages, but for probate and foreclosure, I do give a lot more info rather than just asking for the sale with those. Because I remember those door knocking those leads, and that it was just a long process. And so, but the other type of sequences are more pipeline based. So it's what sellers do, what sellers say. If a seller says, "Hey, the offer's too low," we have a landlord sequence for that, or a vacant house, or an owner occupant. So I do split it up in a landlord, owner, occupant, vacant, because those three have very distinct problems that the others group won't understand, that I can leverage as a copywriter. I can talk about the tenants. I can talk about the junk inside the house. I can talk about a house being a liability if it's just sitting there empty.
Yeah, so, and re-engaging those different types of people and situations requires creativity that we don't always necessarily in sales have the time to do. And so you're right. We go, if left to our own devices, we go back and say, "Hey, I'm just checking in to see if, you've decided to stay." Well, that doesn't necessarily get a response. They'll probably just ignore that, right? Some of the most creative questions, I can share one, probably my favorite one that I've used is it says, like, "I don't mean to pester you, but either you've been eaten by alligators or you're swamped. If you're alive, press 1. Yes, I've been eaten by alligators. 2, send flowers. 3, I wish I had because I'm not selling my house." And it's funny. And it does get people to respond back to you when you send those types of messages.
So, yeah. And so I also want to point out, though, that a lot of people think it's like it's the one in, like, that text might do like 60% of the lifting, but the rest of it, like, imagine sending a cold text to somebody you have no idea. It's not isolated. Like, marketing is hardly ever an isolated event. Like, everything works in cohesion with each other. So it's everything before that as well that happened. So when people like take that and just like implement it into a random sequence, and there's nothing in between, there's nothing before that, it doesn't really work as well. It's not as effective. But it's everything also before that text that helps move it along.
Right. What do you think are, like, if somebody's doing their own, sequences or their own campaigns with the seller, what do you think is the biggest mistake that people make?
One is not doing enough. So when I secret shop investors, I see that they might try to hit me up 3 or 4 times, and then that's it. And I don't ever hear that from them again. But if I do, it might be very long delays. It could be another 3-4 weeks till I hear back, especially early in the funnel. So when you're doing your own, think about, phases in your pipeline or funnel, however you want to put it. Early on, when a lead comes in, I'm very aggressive with this. I mean, like, some people, I've had people say, "Oh, that's kind of a turnoff." Well, they inquired. I want to know yes or no from the beginning. I don't want them to start ghosting me from the beginning. So I'm pretty aggressive up front. When we get a response, and that's where we get like mid-funnel type of sequences, then I start tapering out a bit. Like, if they tell me expressively, "Hey, I'm not really ready yet," cool, that's fine. I'm going to give value. I'm going to give benefit. I'm going to talk about what a cash offer brings. I'm going to talk about what we do differently as a company. what it means for their situation. I'm going to bring that stuff during that timeline while we're waiting for them to be ready. So that's, I think, a couple of things I said there. So not doing it enough, especially early on, chasing with direct questions. Yeah, that's probably, and not utilizing everything, not using email. I don't see people using, I hardly ever see, when I secret shop investors, I see maybe one email come through, and it's usually the initial, hey, we got your form, here's what's next type of thing. And that's it. When email is like such a great tool for, and the response that people tell me that I've heard is like, hey, we don't get a lot of replies via email. That's fine, because it's still another layer of your brand showing up, even if they don't open your email. Okay. I'm still in email lists that I haven't opened in a while, but I buy something from them later just because they keep showing up in my inbox. I see the title, I see the brand there. So it's still a reminder. So still using email as a whole function of that. So using everything, tasks, email, direct mail if you can. When I say direct mail, you can use it in different kind of ways, meaning I told people to like put all these leads up into a list and send them add them to your mailer list. So yeah, using everything, especially email.
Can I share some statistics? Because this is like a whole of marketing and sales effort, and this is a long game. You can get results, you will get results pretty rapidly. What we found when we first installed OmniDrip was we could see how many responses we were getting to the drips, and it was like in the hundreds. Like we would turn, it would end up turning 6 to 20 drip campaigns on a week, and then we'd be getting 60, 80 responses. It grows over time, especially as your database grows with leads. And then over the long term, it compounds. So some of the statistics that kind of back this and why this omnipresent and routine and consistent strategic messaging works is, 80% of sales requires 5 to 12 touches to get a conversion. Right. And if you think about this in the OmniDrip campaigns, you're looking at 20 to 30 touches on average to some of these sellers. And 44% of salespeople give up after one follow-up, just one follow-up, but only 2% of deals close on the first contact. So how could you give yourself the best chance if that was the case? And there's more. Conversion rates by touches in the sales industry. 2 touches equals a 8% contact rate. 3 touches improves you to 13%, and 5+ touches is an 80% plus contact rate improvement. So when you think about that's just consistently hitting them before we even talk about the psychology behind what you're actually messaging to them, which is absolutely insane. And just a couple last points, Paul, and I'll pass to you. But respondents react differently by channel, and this was the point you were making. 90% of text messages are read within 3 minutes. 82% of voicemails are never listened to. Email open rates hover around 20 to 30% on average. So if you were to combine all of these things, you're giving yourself a 3 times better chance to be in contact with that potential seller. And we can tell you, and I'm sure Lindsay has 1,000 examples. Our biggest wholesale fee ever was $90,000. And our touches on that particular client from the time that he came into our ecosystem, time we closed it, was 500. It was absolutely ridiculous. And one last, I found this particular statistic fascinating, which is 50% of leads will respond between day 6 and day 90. So I'll pass it back over to you, Paul, on all that. But that data backs exactly what you're saying.
That's interesting. I didn't that 90-day range, but let me throw another stat here. And there's only and this is not just for real estate. This is just for population wise. there's only like less than 5% of the population that are called hyper buyers or hyper clickers that respond to something right away without any kind of proof, without any kind of rapport. That's less than 5% of the people. So when people are doing like cold texting only, which I'm not downgrading cold texting, but they're only doing that. The people who are responding to that is probably, the 5%, that less than 5% population. While a massive amount of your leads are ones that take a longer time to make a decision. They don't respond immediately to the first touch, the first thing. So, and they need more rapport. They need more trust before they actually make a transactional decision with that other person. So, yeah, those are great stats, man. And that 500, I remember digging in. This was years ago, digging into when you had investor fuse. Digging into this, and like the biggest one we saw was it was like 150 touches, I remember, and it took I think 6 months. So that's what I'm saying is people aren't following up enough. Now you got to balance it out. You got to know. That's why we have like 25 sequences, because there's mid funnel, there's top of funnel, there's end of funnel. We have sequences for I don't know if you guys use them or not, but some of our clients do. Getting referrals, getting reviews, we have sequences for that. At least like putting in a process to make sure you get reviews and testimonials and referrals as well. So I mean, it's a process. It's all just building a system into place, which does the work for you. So,
Lindsay, do you want to talk about? I think we have a really fun example with the drip campaigns and the deal that we did and the panhandle from that.
Yeah, that one was actually wild. We had a seller who, she was in a very difficult situation. She had lost her parents and her husband within a 6-month time period. She was living in a house with no electricity. Her food was in an icebox. She was eating dinner at a picnic table outside. And even with all that distress, which would make you think that would be somebody who would be likely to convert quickly, all the pain, all the distress, all the anxiety just prevented her from being able to move forward. She was talking to several people at the same time, not just us. And she had gone ghost several times. So I activated the drip. When I couldn't get her, because voicemails weren't working, phone calls weren't working, her phone was shut off. Eventually, she had responded to that text. I gave that example about being eaten by alligators. She said they're circling sunflowers, not yet. It's getting close. And I think that just lightened the mood a little bit enough so that she was willing to re-engage and talk with us. That particular person, that was over 6 months that it took us to close that one out. And I think that just the consistency alone is what did it, because to Adam's point with the statistics, right? It doesn't take always just a day or a week or even 2 weeks. And with the pipeline I have coming in and the calls I do need to make for new sellers and continue follow-up, it would be very easy for that person to just fall off the radar because they're ghosting. We're just not getting any response on it.
And that's, as a bad salesperson myself, like we talked about, Lindsay, I'm face to face. I'm not a great salesperson, but I understand the principles. But as a salesperson, you get pretty emotionally tired if you're just, you set a task to follow up. And it's like nothing is happening. It's really easy to get. I mean, that was happening to me. We're just sitting in the car. I was just getting frustrated. It's like nobody's responding to this. So that, that's why I created the system, is just so that, it's not, there's a saying of like, don't let your salespeople chase, marketing chases for you. Because that can wreak havoc on the salesperson's enthusiasm. We need enthusiasm to close sales. And if we're not enthused, because we're just keep hitting a wall, keep hitting failure over and over again, that's going to ruin your conversion rate over time.
Right. And, the other thing, too, is the drip sequences provided additional support that I didn't even know was really necessary for this particular seller. Some of the key things that in your drips is is that it is very specific to our business, right? The links to our website, the links to things about our company. So two things that were really important to her was one, that we were not an out-of-state buyer, because she had been given offers that then were knocked down. And so that was really tough for her. The second thing was that she really liked that we were a veteran-owned company. And so those aren't necessarily things that came up in my conversations with her, but in the drips, those were things that she told me about later that she saw and that were important to her.
So yeah, that's the whole, unique selling proposition of each investor has their own like way of molding what there is unique about them. Not necessarily unique, but something they can fit into their marketing. Being local, being better known, or being national. If you're national, there's some things that and if you want to keep that branding, there's some things there as well you can mold and shape to be a benefit to yourself. So, I mean, it's all, again, like, that's why I call it OmniDrip, kind of it's not a unique, great name, but, the whole reason behind it was when you say you got 100 touches or 500 touches for that one deal, it's actually more than that, because when I send a message and the goal, each message has a goal. Like the goal is not usually just a response, because sometimes it's not that time for response for that seller yet. Sometimes the goal might be, okay, I want them to click on this, head them over to my website. Well, that's 2 touches right there. They saw the message. Maybe they saw the email too, because they usually have back to back. I send an email and then I send a text message right after that as well. And then I'll set a task. I'll set a task after that as well. So I usually have like a 3-prong type of, depending on the sequence, 3-prong type of, or like a pair, I guess, not a pair, but triplets. Send an email first, text, and then a task. They're usually correlated with each other. Usually they blend with each other. And so if they see all 3 of those, they see the call, they see the email, they see the text, they see the call attempt, and my call attempts also have manual text addition to it. So it's like, hey, leave a voice call, leave a voicemail. Here's the framework. Here's what you should say, and then here's what you should text them manually after you leave a voicemail. Well, that's like, that right there is 5 touches. And then if they click on something, that's an extra touch, right? So I want to flex more touches over time. I want them to come to our website. That's more branding in front of their face. And if you're doing retargeting ads, that's even more. You have an infinite amount of more touches after that. So.
Yeah, it's an incredible resource for any business that is marketing direct to sellers. In fact, it's almost necessary today to have a competitive advantage, to have that intentional and well thought out of a sequence and system. And I think for a lot of investors, they're chasing deals. They're just trying to bring revenue into their company. They're trying to increase their number of deals per month. Like, they don't really have time. It's very heavy for you to sit down and think intentionally, like a marketer, like a copywriter, and write out 25 different intentional sequences for different situations: owner occupied, absentee owners, vacant houses, referral follow-ups. I mean, there's PPL. PPL is so big in the industry. Today, a lot of people are buying leads from PPL sources, pay per lead sources like Motivated Leads, Motivated Sellers, LeadZolo, Property Leads, like all these people who are just selling leads. Well, those leads have a speed to lead component, and your CRM and your drip sequences can make sure that you're actually tending to those leads. Because we all know for PPL and direct mail, things that you're spending money on, speed to lead is the number one priority for those leads. Like, if you're sending direct mail, you've got to answer the phone when they call. You cannot miss calls. If you're, and if you do, you wait a day to contact them, there's just so much leakage in your company if you don't have something intentional like this. And to build it yourself is a really heavy lift if that's not your expertise. And I think, Paul, what you've done is made this easy for investors. I mean, it's probably one of the highest ROI investments we've made in our business. If we actually sit down and do the math on like how many of the deals we've closed have responded to a sequence, it's pretty good. it's actually really good in our business for the, the price tag that we paid for OmniDrip. I don't even remember, Paul. What's it cost to get OmniDrip today?
It's a couple thousand depending on where you're at, but yeah, depending on what type of investor you are.
Right, and you spend a couple $1,000s. You have the sequences forever, and they bring back literally six and multiple six figures in revenue to your business. Like there's no other channel sales or marketing thing you're doing that gets you that big of an ROI. There just isn't. So it's kind of crazy, man.
I should
charge more, maybe.
I should rephrase that. When I say a couple thousand, that's on the lower range. So it's yeah, yeah. I mean, it is. I charge in a way that makes sense. That like it's not more than a deal that you're gonna benefit from. One deal is gonna pay for it. 3 times, four times over, depending on the size of it. But yeah, I mean, it does. I mean, somebody can use Chat GPT to do that stuff, I suppose, right? But I think the problem with that is you don't really know. You can ask Chat too, and what do I do here, right? But I think the problem is where do you start from? Like I was just yesterday on Chat trying to get it to do one sequence for me. I don't like all my copy is written by me. It's not written by Chat. Because it does deviate. It just goes in this tangent, and the end result is like, this isn't what I asked for. And so, Chat is good for like one thing at a time, like one message, perhaps. But when you start adding more complexity to it, like, now when I say complexity, I'm talking about, like I said, emails and text, but also what's inside of it. There's whole layers in the onion of what types of messages. We have problem solution, we have benefit, we have typos, we have, so there's all these layers, and then you dump it into Chat. It's like, here's what you need to do. Here's 22 things you need to do. And it just like explodes on you. There's nothing.
Too much. Yeah.
There's too much for it to handle. So yeah, but that's my experience with Chat. People can use it if they want, but it is time intensive. That's another problem. I'm going on a tangent here though, is that as a CEO of your business, whatever business you run, you're CEO of it. There's a whole like infatuation with using Chat, but now you're taking hours to figure something out, what to save a couple $1,000s, when your job shouldn't be like, I'm a Chat GPT operator. You should be, operating the business instead. And so it is costing a lot of time for people to try and learn Chat GPT. Sure, use it in your company, but don't be the guy that's the operator for it. That's trying to learn how to everything's going to be run by Chat now. So
prompt engineering. There are people who go to school for that. I think, yeah, you're right. Time is one of the most, it's the most valuable resource. And I see this all the time with investors, new and old alike, where if we were to audit their time, they're spending time on non-revenue generating activities. And even me, I got to audit myself and make sure the things that I'm doing are aligned with our goals and they're generating revenue or growing our company in a meaningful way. Like, what am I going to get the most leverage on? I can promise you, for me, it's not sitting down and writing 25 different sequences with 500 different touch points that are intentionally thought about and built in such a specific way that they take your lead on a journey that ultimately ends up in them realizing that they need to talk to you so that you have an opportunity to make more revenue in your business.
Here's the other thing that's important to say about this. It's not just the time that it takes you to do the research, to work with ChatGPT to get them. Now you have 500 messages. You still have to put them in your system. You still have to set up the triggers. You still have to make it do all the things that you want it to do. So, I mean, I know, Paul, that's something that you offer. I certainly took advantage of it, is going into our system and setting it all up, testing it, validating that everything's working the way we wanted it to work, because the tech is not my specialty. And so to do that would have taken an enormous amount of time.
Yeah. And we set up tags too. So you can, you guys had investor fees, which had good reporting on this.
We're in Resimpli.
Right. You had investor fees. Now you're in Resimpli. Resimpli, we set up the tags as well. So tags, so if anybody's probably, nobody knows what that is, but I want to make sure that there's reporting, because as CEO, you want to check back on these things. It's not just how you feel, how is this working, but it's also checking back to see what's going on. So we set up tags, and with any CRM, if you have the ability to do this, set up a good tagging system so that you can go back, pull data, and say, okay, what's in a I don't know if I told you, Lindsay, but I set it up so that if your team has any spare time, I don't know if they have any spare, if your salesperson has spare time, they can pull, like, here's everybody that's right now in the offer to low sequence. And they can work those leads right now if they have the time for it. They can send them more mail, whatever it is. Or they can look back and say, okay, what are the most deals that have been in this sequence here, right? You can go back and check. I want to make sure we have clear reporting from the get-go. So we set that up as well. And the automations as well. Like you mentioned, speed to lead. So my favorite sequence that we have is called, what I call it Digistopper, because it's for the PPL leads, it's for your PPC leads, because those I know statistically, they're going down the line shopping. They fill out your form, they go to the next one, they fill out your form. I want to immediately stop them from doing that. I want to have as much pattern interruption to get their attention. So it's really aggressive up front. But aggressive is a kind of a bad word in this sense, because it's not like everything's very conversational. Hey, forgot to mention, here's how we buy a house. Here's our article on how you sell your house quickly. Just let you know, if you want to get a cash offer this week, here's our calendar, whatever it is. We have different ways of doing it, but depending on what you have. But yeah, that's kind of in a nutshell the Digistopper.
Yeah, I love it. I was just actually looking at the tags right now, realizing that I can see what's in what specific drip campaign at any given time.
Yeah,
that's pretty awesome. Okay. Paul, this is amazing. I think this is like almost a necessary component of people's businesses, and the ROI in this particular thing that you've put together for investors it's a competitive advantage. If you don't have this, you're fighting basically with one arm behind your back, because it's the barrier to entry to get into something like OmniDrip. And I know you have different things for different levels of investors, is not very high. So you need this in your business. This is about realizing the marketing spend you made and creating revenue in your business. So I'm going to drop a link in the notes in the description for this, so people can go check you out and schedule a call just to see how you can help their business.
Yeah, definitely.
And you guys, if you want to reach out to Paul, what's the best way for people to get in contact with you?
They could email me, they could DM me, but so my email is paul@reiomnidrip.com. I'll respond to that within that same day. You can head over to the website. It's got a lot of information, reiomnidrip.com. You can opt in. When you opt in, you're going to get samples. You're going to get a demo. You're going to see, at least my email drip system for OmniDrip. You can see that, which is not like, don't judge, just, there's different styles of marketing communication depending on the industry, right? Because I'm the brand. So my email copy is a lot different than what I do for a motivated seller. Yeah, those are three ways right there. Opt in on my site, just visit my site to get more information, or email me directly.
Awesome, man. I appreciate your time. Lindsay, thanks for taking some time to come on with us and talk about the sales aspect of this. And everybody, just check the link, REI OmniDrip. It's literally a necessity in your business. So highly recommend you at least taking a flyer on it, talking to Paul, and seeing how he can help you convert more of the leads you've already paid for into money in your business. This has been another episode of the 7-Figure Flipping Podcast. I'm excited for you guys. Thanks for listening. Do me a favor. If you've never done this before, my only ask is that you leave us a 5-star review so that more people can see our show and we can impact more lives. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you on the next one.